Hi, I'm James, and this is Action and Adventure Tips, the place where you, the content creator, come to learn about how to make content using realistic things so you don't get that dreaded one-star review when you mistakenly put the safety off on a Glock or other silly stuff like that. Today's topic of discussion, I'm sure you've all been waiting for this because everybody always talks about it, the AR-15. So what is the AR-15? Is it a weapon of war? Does AR stand for automatic rifle? Is it designed to kill more people? Well, yes and no. If we hop in our Wayback Machine with Sherman and Peabody and go back into the 1950s, a gentleman named Eugene Stoner came up with a concept that he called the AR-10. That's the big brother of the AR-15, and the whole purpose was he was trying to get it adopted by the U.S. military. It fired a 7.62 by 5.1 millimeter round, now known as the 7.62 NATO, and it had a whole bunch of features that were unique. First off, it wasn't a piece of metal and wood. Instead, it was composites and aluminum and alloys. It was a lot lighter. It had selective fire, which meant that you could shoot one round or you could pull the trigger back and it would continue to fire like a machine gun. Well, the Army didn't adopt it, which is a shame because it's a really great rifle. But eventually, Armalite, the company that was actually producing it, and it was called the AR-15 because it was the Armalite rifle, number 15, was purchased by Colt, and Colt started manufacturing it for the U.S. Air Force and eventually for the U.S. Army and the Marines, and for pretty much the rest of the free world. This became known as the M16. Now, there are several variations of the M16, but the key thing about the M16 is that it is a selective fire rifle, which means that it can either shoot single shot or it can shoot, multiple bullets at the same time, or you can have it on safe. And it typically came with a 20-round magazine. Now, the original AR-15 developed by Stoner came with a 25-round magazine, which I think is a little bit better. It's not too long as to create a problem that a curved magazine does, but it gives you a little bit of extra firepower. So eventually, the M16 was adopted by the U.S. military and NATO and given the designation NATO for NATO. And the 5.56 by 45 millimeter became the NATO standard. This is all based on the 223 caliber, which is based on the 222 caliber. What do they have in common? Well, they're all intermediate cartridges. So that's basically what a assault weapon, as it's defined, fires. An assault weapon, of course, being a firearm that's designed to fire with selective fire or fully automatic, a lightweight intermediate cartridge, and is shorter and lighter than a normal infantry rifle. Okay, so you can see why some people would say that the AR-15, the civilian version, is a quote-unquote assault weapon. It's not, and I'll explain why real simple. It doesn't have the capacity to fire full automatic. That is what defines an assault weapon from a semi-automatic rifle. Some people will refer to the AR-15 as a modern sporting rifle. To me, it's just a semi-automatic rifle. So let's talk a little bit about it. First off, let's talk about the cartridge. This is the AR-15/M16 or M4 cartridge. It's 5.56 by 45 millimeters. That means 45 millimeters from here to there, as opposed to a 7.62, which, as you can see, was a little bit larger. Now, if we take the 7.62 by 51, which is what this is, NATO round, 7.62 NATO, and compare it to its grandparent, the 30-06 or .30-06, that was used in World War I and World War II and the Korean War by the U.S. military, you can see that the cartridge is a heck of a lot smaller. This cartridge is, the bullet itself is a third of an inch in diameter almost, 0.30, while this one is only 0.22 inches in diameter. So the same as a little 22 cartridge you might go rabbit hunting with. Of course, as I pointed out in a previous video, the 22 is a lot smaller and a lot less powerful. So this cartridge, by the way, isn't necessarily designed to kill so much as it is to stop people and wound them. Because, to put it bluntly, if you can take 3 people out of the battlefield by shooting one of them and having 2 others serve as litter carriers, you're doing a lot better job than killing somebody. So, anyhow, let's talk a little bit about the AR-15. It does come nowadays pretty standard with the 30-round magazine. You can buy this. This is a Magpul. They're just wonderful little magazines. They're made out of polymers. Originally, they were coming with the 20-round magazines. Matter of fact, when you first purchased them, Colt did sell the civilian version, the AR-15, even way back in the 60s. So yes, you could buy an AR-15 civilian version and semi-automatic. So let's talk about the parts. We're going to start here at the very front. This little bad boy right here is called a flash suppressor. And what it's designed to do is actually minimize the impact of the flash. So you don't have this huge fireball coming out. Instead, it all goes out to the side like that. That really helps the shooter in maintaining the ability to stay on target. When instead of being blinded by their own fireball, instead they just have minimal blinding. It still can be blinding at night though, let me tell you on that. You have a barrel. This is the part where the actual bullet comes flying out of. You have a front sight. Now, some people don't have that. This one actually does. You have what's called the foregrip, or what other people would call, or is actually called a handguard. The purpose of the handguard, of course, is to protect your hand from getting melted by the barrel as it heats up, as you fire multiple rounds through it. And these bad boys can get heated. I mean, you'll see smoke kind of pouring out of them. Well, you'll see that anyhow because, well, it's burning modern gunpowder or propellant. A little delta ring right here. This is actually used. You pull this back so you can take off the handguard. Interesting story, history, if you will, is that the original handguard of the M16 or AR-15 was triangular shaped. So you had a left and a right side, and you had to be sure to get them right. In about 1983, the M16A2 came out, in which case they used a rounded handguard, easier to hold, especially for smaller hands. And you didn't have to have a left side and a right side. It was just, you know, one piece, and it fit both up and bottom. Okay. Most AR-15s now come with a Picatinny rail, which is this little thing right here. You can see the little grooves. It allows you to attach a number of objects to it. In this case, I have a nice little 1x4 power scope, just because this is pretty much something useful here on the property, especially dealing with coyotes. If you need it for home defense, a 4-power scope is a lot less power than a 9-power scope, so you don't have somebody's full thing blown up your face. Okay, you have a charging handle. That's this part right here. You can see me pulling it back. You can see it's also under pressure. Why is it under pressure? Because there is a spring pushing the bolt forward. And when I release it, you'll see the bolt slam forward. Bam, that's it. This is the dust cover right here. And on this side, you have what's called the magazine catch release. And I'll show you how that operates. You simply insert the magazine like this, and it catches. By pushing this button, the magazine will drop out. Okay, so moving further along, you have a buffer tube right here and a stock. This stock is an adjustable stock, so you can shorten it or lengthen it. Depending on the size of the body of the person shooting it, you may want to have it fully extended. You may want to have it a little closer in. As you can see, it ratchets in piece by piece, so it's not one or the other. Alrighty, the grip makes it ergonomically functional. It's easier to shoot something like this than to shoot it like this. As you can see, my wrist is kind of canked up if I have to do that, or canted up, however you wish to call it, as opposed to being straight in like that. So, magazine well, that's where the magazine goes. And you already saw the bolt on the inside. Right there, inside the bolt, is the firing pin. The actual hammer for this is in the lower receiver. Now, let's turn it around on this side. Matter of fact, actually, notice the bolt. The bolt is actually in the rear position. How you release the bolt is by pushing on this button right here, if I can find it, right there, the bolt release catch. So by doing that, the bolt will slide forward, chambering around. And it will continue to do that until you are out of rounds, in which case the bolt will remain back in what we call the locked position. Okay, two big parts are the upper receiver, that's this part, and the lower receiver. That's this part. And the great thing about these things is that you can usually just kind of release a pin and separate them like that for cleaning. And this way you can now pull a bolt out and clean it, or the bolt carrier group as it's called actually. And here's the hammer. Firing pin is in the bolt so you don't see it. Bam. Let's see, anything else about it? We talked a little bit about the sights. Oh, here's a really important one. The fire selector switch. You can see mine says safe or fire. When I fire this, it's only in semi-automatic mode. That's all. That's all just about any AR-15 can do legally. And I'm going to get into a video about that later on the different gun control laws that are enacted. So that way, getting a fully automatic rifle as a civilian or pistol is somewhat difficult. Not impossible, just difficult and expensive. So, what do we know about this? Well, we know it's different than the US military version. Why? Because, well, first off, the civilian AR-15, you can configure it to any way you like. The military, they don't like you to configure it the way you like it. So you can put on a 16-inch barrel, a 24-inch barrel. If you get a tax stamp, you can put on a 9 or a 10-inch barrel. With the military, you had the M16. It had a 20-inch barrel. It had a 20-round magazine. Oh, and the original M16 did not have this little thing called a forward assist. That's where if the cartridge didn't feed properly, you could just jam it like that and shove it in there, and it would. So the M16A1 that came out actually did have that forward assist because they learned that might help to prevent soldiers from getting killed. Well, in the 1980s, they came out with the M16A2. As I mentioned, it had the rounded foregrip. And it also came out a little different on how the fire select switch went. It went from safe to semi to full auto, changing over from the M16A1 to safe, semi, burst. And burst meant a 3-round burst. So you pull the trigger once, you get 3 rounds through the barrel, or 3 bullets through the barrel. They both had the 20-inch barrel, and somehow they decided to go with a different modification, which is now known as the M4 carbine, which apparently is pretty widespread use. That has a 14.5-inch barrel. Now, for a civilian AR-15, the minimum length you can have on a rifle is 16 inches, unless you get a tax stamp. And I'm going to cover that in a different video. The military version, 14.5. And it also has the safe, the semi, or burst mode. And there are some that actually have the fully automatic. But for all intents and purposes, the military went away from full auto because people were burning through ammo a lot faster. And if you have a 3-round burst, it's a lot easier to put bullets on target than firing full auto. So anyhow, I hope you learned something. Just remember, when you're writing about or creating content about the AR-15, the civilian version, it is selective fire only. It has to have a 16-inch barrel. And it should also be 30 inches minimum length overall. That means from this part right here to this part right here. And as you can see, this probably is. Well, it is, because everything is customizable parts that I bought online to actually build this thing. And you can do that except for this part right here, the lower receiver. Why? Because that's considered the firearm part by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So if you want to get one of these, you actually have to go to somebody who sells them and has a record of the serial number and reports it to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And you do what's called a NICS test, basically a quick background check to determine that you are not prohibited from having a firearm. Something to be covered in another video. Okay, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a comment down below, and also leave a comment down below if you want to see me do any other things. Check out my website, jamespeet.com, and stay safe out there.